66 books in your Bible. You can think of it as a box set, if it's easier. There's 39 books in the Old Testament, and there's 27 in the New Testament. The Old Testament is bigger, okay? Now, when you read through your Bible, another number for you, hope this isn't too much, there are 7 sections or 7 different types of books in our Bible. And if we start with the Old Testament right at the beginning, the first bunch of books are what we call creation and law, if you like, and it's all about how the world began, what God did, and how he called a people from amongst all the people to be his own people and to be a nation, and he put in them the law of God, how we do these things. Okay, and that is the first part of the Bible. You will find famous characters in there like Abraham, you may have heard of him, Joseph, of course he had a big flashy coat, and Moses, his story is all in there. So that is the creation and the law. Now once that nation was established, it took a long time, the next part of the Bible is history. It literally is historical documents, and it's very accurate and very detailed, and it talks about the history of Israel. The third part is what we call poetry and wisdom. So there are books of poetry, songs, literally psalms. You've heard of the psalms. They're songs to God, to worship God. And wisdom, you may have heard of Proverbs, where it's packed full of wisdom. Honestly, if you don't know which way is up, read Proverbs, especially if you're young. Man, it's brilliant stuff. Love it. Also, practical, your relationships, business, excellent if you're in business, read Proverbs. The fourth part of the Bible, still in the Old Testament, is prophecy. There's lots of books about prophecy. Now, by prophecy, we mean people who are looking into the future and saying, this is what God is saying about this, and this is what God is saying about that. A lot of those prophecies were short term, and we can see and trace through the history books how they were fulfilled, how God actually met and with the people and did exactly what he said he was going to do. Some of the prophecies look way into the future. Some of the prophecies foretell a second agreement, a second covenant. They talk about Jesus in the absolute minutest of detail and say this is what this guy is going to be like when he comes, and this is what he's going to do. And so it prophesies about that. Some of it goes even further into the future and goes right to the end of time. Okay, so that's the Old Testament. We have got creation, the law, that's 1. We've got history books, that's 2. We've got prophecies 4. And where's my fingers working? 1, 2, 3 is poetry and wisdom. Okay, there's your 4 sections in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it starts with Gospels. Now, Gospels are basically good news. It starts with 4 Gospels and 1 history book called Acts. Okay, the Gospels are the story of the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Why are there 4, you might ask? Well, there are 4 because it's important, and we get the viewpoint of 4 different people, 4 witnesses, if you like, of the life of Jesus. That gives it more credibility. If the police were investigating a crime and they got all the witnesses together, and all those witnesses said they didn't know each other, and yet they all told exactly the same story in detail, you probably wouldn't believe them. They say, no, this is a setup, this is suspicious. But what they look for is different angles. Somebody's looking at me from over there, somebody's looking at me from over there, somebody might be up there, that's scary. Okay, eye in the sky. There are 4 different perspectives on this, and put together they paint the story. So the story of Jesus is absolutely crucial. Once they've told that story, we have the book of Acts. That is probably one of the most exciting books in the Bible, because it's the story of what happened next. After Jesus died, he rose again and he went to heaven. It portrays that, and then it says what happened to next. Well, there were a bunch of guys and girls, they didn't know which way up, they were sad, they thought it was all over. But God took those people, and it's how the story of Jesus and his message from that place went worldwide. 2,000 years later, it's still growing, it's still going, getting bigger than ever. So that is the book of Acts, Gospel and Acts, we'll put them together. The 6th section, or the second in the New Testament, is books, they're letters. They're letters. As this church has got going all over the world, they needed help, they needed advice, they needed guidance. They were young, they were brand new young churches. So the apostle guys who knew what they were doing, the guys who were leading this, used to write them letters and say, try this is how it works, and give them instruction and help and encouragement. So they're the letters. The very last one is what we call Revelation. And that is the last book of the Bible, and that is looking forward to the end of time, the end of all things. Okay, that one, blow your mind. It's full of imagery, full of imagery. You start reading it and your mind think, oh, what does that look like? Okay, movie makers love it. They pinch all the stuff from it and make big movies because the imagery is so good. Okay, now we've now got a train going past, this high train. I live near a railway line. Hope it doesn't get in the way of us. The book of Revelation gets used for all of that. I just wish some of the people who take it and run away with it read the other stuff as well. So don't get carried away with that book. Read the other stuff first. Okay, so that's a very brief overview of what's in the Bible. You can spend your life studying it